And listen carefully, parenting has nothing to do with how we look. It has everything to do with how our kids are developing. It just doesn't work. Moses. Big, huge historical figure. Right? He was the one that when he was born at a time when all the people born to the Hebrews, they were slaves in Egypt. And that the Hebrew race was kind of, as a race, they were enslaved in Egypt. And there got to be so many of them, they worried about an overthrow, so they said, okay, all the baby boys that are born, they have to be killed. But when Moses was born, his mom and dad said, no. And they hid him, and they hid him in some bulrushes by the Nile River, and then the Pharaoh's daughter was there and sees this little baby, and her heart instantly just won over, and she's going to take it into the palace and raise this child, and needs some nanny to watch, and picks his actual mother to watch. And Moses grows up, and he knows who he is. He's a Hebrew. He knows beyond that. He knows that with his position of authority and power, he's going to play some kind of role in redeeming and rescuing his race of people from the bondage and abuse that they were under. And one day, Moses, as a young man now, he was out kind of surveying some of the work that was going on in the empire, because he was like, the adopted son of Pharaoh. He had all sorts of power. And he looks, and he sees a bunch of Hebrews that are working, but there's this Egyptian who's supervising everything, and he's ticked off of what these Hebrews are doing. And so he begins to beat them like animals. And Moses looks at their behavior, and he grows very angry that these people are treated like slaves and not being treated like animals. They're being beaten. They're being abused. And he said, I've got to correct that. But he corrected it in his anger. And he went down in his anger. He kills the Egyptian. It did stop the abuse. Did. Stopped right away. Kills him. And he goes, oh man. Hides the body in the sand, right? Buried in sand. Not a good way to hide a body, by the way. Buries it in the sand. A couple of days later, he's back in the same region. He sees a couple of Hebrews fighting with each other. And he goes, man, why are you brothers fighting with each other? And they look at him and go, were you going to kill us like you did the Egyptian yesterday? And he goes, oh my God, oh man, this word is going to spread. Sure enough, it did spread. And Pharaoh found out, and then Pharaoh was going to end Moses' life. And he had to flee the country where he spent 40 years in the Arabian desert, waiting for another chance. Now think about that. He saw a situation that was wrong and needed to be corrected. But because he did it in anger, he did things that only violated the Word of God, alienated the people of God, and destroyed the family that he was a part of. Because when we discipline or correct in anger, that's pretty much what happens. When we discipline in anger, what we tend to do is we tend to communicate conditional love. We tend to communicate a performance orientation that says, if you don't step up to this particular line, you are out of my favor, out of my graces, I'm going to let you have it. We go too far. We end up getting forced compliance. In other words, we manipulate behavior rather than true character transformation. The demeanor principle. I must be in full control of my spirit, my mind. When I discipline, I cannot do it in anger. It'll only create a problem. And then I would suggest this as another foundational principle for the whole discipline deal. I call it the appropriateness principle. I must discipline with fitting force and with a reassuring spirit. That's appropriate discipline. Fitting force. Hey, have you ever wondered about this verse you hear quoted from time to time? This actually comes from Leviticus, but it's also quoted in the New Testament. If anyone injures his neighbor, whatever he has done must be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. How many of you heard that before? Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, right? And you know what we tend to think it means? What it means is, you do this to me, I do this to you. Right? Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. It's about like this, I'm going to hurt you right back the same way. That has nothing to do at all with what God meant when He put this in the Bible. Nothing. This is actually a principle that was to guide their legal system in terms of crime and punishment. And here's all I'm saying. If the crime is an eye gets lost, the punishment should be fitting for an eye being lost. If the crime is a tooth got lost, then the punishment should fit a tooth being lost. Tooth is not nearly as important as an eye. This is a proverbial way of simply saying the punishment should always fit the crime. It should not be too severe for the crime, but it also should not be too light for the crime. Make sure that when you punish, when you discipline, it's appropriate for the offense. That is so critical when we're parenting. If we correct too harshly or hardly, it just builds resentment in the life of our kid. Let's say you're driving home today, and you got pulled over for something, first time ever in your life, speeding. Because I'm sure none of you ever have done that before. And you get pulled over, and you're going 4 miles an hour over the speed limit. And you're like, I can't believe it. I might have known I was going to look at it. Nobody gets pulled over 4 miles an hour over. Isn't there a law somewhere? Thou shalt not get pulled over unless you're at least 10. And you're like, oh, okay. The officer comes up and you're going, well, he goes, do you know how fast you were going? And you're going, and then you decide whether to sin again or not. Lie, tell the truth. I don't know. So we know speed was 55, you're going 59. And you want to go, so? And you're going, you know, it's still little. He's going to give me a warning. What if he goes, you know what? I'm going to have to write down a ticket for speeding. The ticket's going to cost you $130. You're like, $130 ticket? I'm only going 4 miles an hour over the speed limit. And the officer goes, that is abusing an officer. I'm going to have to write you another citation. And you start to open the door and get out of the car and you explain your situation. He goes, well, now you're assaulting an officer. Now, and you're slammed behind the car. Cuffs are put on you. You're hauled off to jail. I mean, if that happened to you, would you say to yourself, well, I really learned to respect the law today? Or would you be saying to yourself, oh, I cannot believe the way that cop acted. All of that, all I was doing was you'd be so resentful that all that heavy stuff came down on you when all you were doing is going 4 miles an hour over the speed limit. But you know what we can do as parents? We can do the same kind of thing. Our kid commits some crime, and we can come in with both barrels blazing. Maybe we're just, our temper's a little short, maybe we're a little tired, maybe whatever, we're just frustrated with this stuff. But they do this, and then, bam, you let them have it. There, I disciplined my kid. Oh, man, that was so much over the top. The only thing it really did was build resentment in the heart of your kid. But if you discipline too lightly, then it never works. I remember when I was in 7th grade. It was in the summer. I'm home. Mom's home. Sisters were home. Dad's at work. I don't even remember what I did. You think I would, because I committed so few crimes when I was young. I can't remember what I did. But I remember my mom just like, that's it. And she went and she got out the wooden spoon. There's the wooden spoon. And she came over to me and she began to wail away at my behind with that wooden spoon. Whack, 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 whack. And I was standing there looking at it. And when she finally had spent all her energy whacking me, God, I am so sorry for this. I looked at her and said, is that all you've got? And then she said the most ominous words that as a child I could ever hear. Wait till your father gets home. Woo! Yeah, you know what? Well, I didn't think about that when I said that. But you know that was not going to work because it was too late. It didn't loosen up pain. It was going to make me change anything. Now, what my dad may have done when we got home, now that was another factor which led to a whole other chapter of the story that I'll share with you sometime. Oh, yeah, you know what I just inadvertently did? I just inadvertently brought up